The Ford Bronco might be a good off-roader, but it is also very compromised on-road, and its Ranger underpinnings do tend to show when you start driving it around. And that's exactly where the Land Rover Defender steps in. With its monstrous off-road capabilities and on-road performance that can only be described as civil, the British SUV proves why it was, and always will be, the pinnacle of off-road SUVs. So, let's not waste any more time and get to the bottom of how this 2025 Land Rover Defender proves you don't have to go Bronco to get a badass SUV. Unmistakable off-road prowess. The Land Rover Defender has always been regarded as the best off-roader, proven by its phenomenally rich history of both civilian and military use. The quote-unquote new Defender has been designed as a much more road-oriented vehicle. However, this doesn't mean that it will be any less capable off-road. In fact, it will still be one of the top performers in this segment, courtesy of its considerably more complex suspension setup, especially compared to the competition. You see, the Defender utilizes a completely independent front and rear axle, which allows the wheels to work much more autonomously and allows the vehicle's suspension to flex and twist much more freely. In addition to that, you can opt for the Land Rover Defender with air suspension too, and that would, in our opinion, be the way to go, because you'll simply eliminate any compromise. This is necessary for the Defender because it, unlike its rivals, utilizes a unibody chassis, which would usually be a big problem for an off-roader due to the inability of the chassis to flex properly. You'll be getting fully adaptive suspension with variable ground clearance, and this is one of the key reasons why the Defender can keep up with both the Bronco and the Wrangler in terms of off-roading, despite being a far more sophisticated vehicle by design. Unbelievably smooth on-road experience. Now, if it is so good an off-roader, how could they possibly make it good on-road? Well, as we mentioned, the new Defender isn't a regular off-road SUV, in the sense that it doesn't use a body-on-frame chassis. Instead, it utilizes a unibody chassis, which allows it to be considerably more structurally rigid compared to regular off-roaders on-road. This means that the SUV has drastically less body roll than either the Bronco or the Wrangler, both of which are notorious for their atrocious performance in the bends due to the immense body roll. Plus, the coil springs fitted to a completely independent rear axle allow the vehicle to be much more selective and refined when it comes down to ironing out bumps, compared to the solid rear axle with leaf springs used in either of its two American rivals. In addition to that, the air suspension that is used on higher-end versions of the Defender further improves the ride quality and, when fitted with more road-oriented wheels and tires, the ride of the Defender can only be described as silky smooth. It's just one step below its older and more luxurious brother, the Range Rover. The Defender is what we'd call the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde of the automotive world. If you're looking for a vehicle that can do two polar opposite things at the same time, and excellently, you simply won't find a better alternative to it. But that's not the only thing it excels at, as it is also the king of practicality. A wide array of body styles. First of all, we have to say that we adore the Defender's styling. It's both modern and traditional in equal and perfect measure, and it looks both very posh and very rugged at the same time. It's much more universal and has a much more versatile charm than the Bronco and Wrangler's more agricultural character. However, that isn't to say that it is any less practical than the two in terms of interior and cargo storage. Quite the opposite. You get a wider choice of body styles than those two. The Defender 90, 110, and 130. The Defender 90 is a three-door variation, pretty comparable to the smaller Wrangler and Bronco, and the 110 represents a rival to the regular four-door versions. However, the 130 offers an added 15 inches of length, which translates primarily to the cargo area at the back, making it a true behemoth and a class leader in this regard. Engine palette is extremely varied. The Land Rover Defender is probably one of the most varied vehicles when it comes down to the sheer choice of engines, as it offers not two, not three, but 4 different engines in the US, and even more in Europe, as you also get the 2 additional diesel engines. Unfortunately, no oil burners for us. However, the The fact that you have two V8s on offer should be more than sufficient. Wouldn't you agree? But let's not get ahead of ourselves and check out the more sensible choices first. At the bottom of the range, you'll be getting a 2.0-liter Turbo 4, which might seem underwhelming. However, it produces 296 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. This would be more than enough to propel it from 0 to 60 in 6.7 to 7.5 seconds, depending on the body style. Oh, and you'll also be able to tow up to 7,700 pounds, which is astronomical. And it beats out all the mid-sized pickup trucks, let alone its direct rivals. Next up is the 3.0-liter 6-cylinder MHEV version, and it is probably the most well-rounded choice of the bunch, with 395 horsepower and a whopping 406 pound-feet of torque. With it, the Defender can spring from 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds and can tow up to a whopping 8,200 pounds. Next up is a supercharged 5.0-liter V8, which makes 518 horsepower. This is the old AJ133 engine, which has been proven as generally reliable. However, the only reason we'd want to buy this is because of the sound. The AJ133 is by far the best-sounding V8 engine of all time. It will go from 0 to 60 in 5.2 seconds, and albeit torquey, with its 461 pound-feet, it can only tow up to 7,716, which isn't great. That's why, if you're looking for performance, we'd recommend the newly introduced Defender Octa with its 4.4-liter twin-turbo V8, the same one used in the Range Rover Sport SV. This monster of an engine produces 635 horsepower and 553 pound-feet of torque, allowing it to jump from 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. Yes, you heard that right. 4 seconds! Both the 5.0 and 4.4 will run laps around the Wrangler 392 and the Bronco Raptor, though. As for the MPG figures, all of these engines have remarkably similar MPG figures. The 4-cylinder does 18 around town and 21 on the open. The 3.0 does 17 around town and 23 on the highway. And the V8 will do 14 in the city and 19 in the open. The Octa is a fair bit thirstier, though, with a combined MPG of just 13 miles per gallon. Pricing and trim levels. However, all of this versatility has a price, and the price is, well, the literal price of the Defender. The British land yacht starts with the S trim. You'll be paying $61,000 for the 110 model, and frankly, it isn't worth the money. You'll be much better off with either the Bronco or the Wrangler at this point, as despite being a more sophisticated vehicle, the Defender is much more bare bones at this point. You won't be getting air suspension, the interior will be very rudimentary, and you won't have any real luxury features, whereas the other two will be practically fully kitted out. The X-Dynamic SE starts from $72,100 for the 4-door version, and once again, this is not worth the hassle, as apart from a few cosmetic changes, you'll be getting very little from the Defender. The Defender X is next, and it does come with air suspension. However, it starts from $91,800, which is a lot, but it's pretty comparable to the Bronco Raptor's price. And while the Raptor is more powerful than the 3.0-liter Defender, it's also slower from 0 to 60 than it by half a second. And not just that, but the MPG difference is so humongous that we wouldn't recommend the Raptor over it if you aren't a die-hard off-roader. The Defender X will be more comfortable. It will be nearly, but not as capable as the Raptor off-road, but will be a much better towing machine as well as a more complete all-rounder. The Defender V8 starts from $113,500, and while the novelty of having a V8 is nice, and it is also especially nice that it is immensely powerful, we wouldn't really recommend it over the Defender X. It will be marginally more capable off-road due to its Terrain Response 2 system, and you will get a nicer interior and stuff like privacy glass and sporty design cues. However, the price difference is just too much for us. The Octa and Octa Edition 1 start from $152,000 and $167,800 respectively. And out of the two, we just tell you to go for the regular Octa. Apart from cosmetics, you won't be getting much for the additional $15,000 you'll be paying for the Edition 1. Overall, we'd recommend you just go for the Defender X. The more expensive variations will beat your wallet to a pulp, and the less expensive versions offer way too little to satisfy the craving for a Defender. If this is what you're willing to shell out for a vehicle, and it being British is a must, we'd suggest looking into the Discovery. It's a better off-roader than the Defender without the air suspension, and it's also a better vehicle than it. That said, we wouldn't blame you for skipping it because of its Sylvester Stallone-looking rear end.